Conclusion.
In your estimation, what caused the death of Matthew Eapen?
I think Matthew Eapen died from strangulation.
Let me understand. What you're saying is that somebody, some individual, manually strangled this child.
That's correct.
Dr. Gillis showed us how he believes the fatal assault occurred.
I think this child was strangled with someone's thumbs on the neck on either side of the voice box.
Mm-hmm.
On Matthew's right side, that thumb compressed the carotid artery, the great artery supplying the right side of Matthew Eapen's brain.
And cut off by pressure on the carotid artery the flow of blood to the brain, which caused
death of the tissue in the brain, the death of the brain itself on that side.
And that caused?
Brain swelling, and the brain swelling in turn caused death.
We told District Attorney Coakley that Dr. Gillis did not believe that Matthew Eapen had been shaken and slammed to death.
He has now given us an opinion of what it was that killed Matthew Eapen. Imagine what that might be, if you've not heard.
I cannot.
Oh. In general terms, he says, the prosecution got it wrong. He says, so did the defense. Dr. Gillis said that Matthew Eapen was strangled to death.
I don't know how Dr. Gillis could even know that or begin to reach that conclusion.
All right.
But Coakley says, even if Dr. Gillis' version of the crime is correct, it does not exonerate Louise Woodward.
I will say that if that is his opinion, he would have to agree that it happened shortly before the child appeared at the emergency room.
Dr. Gillis does not agree with Martha Coakley.
That's a very curious thing in babies. If you or I had been strangled in this fashion, we would know immediately that one part of the brain wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
But little babies in the first half year or first year of life, the brain damage evolves in a different fashion. And that brain damage may evolve over 12, 24 or more hours after the time of the strangulation.
The baby was strangled within a day of his admission to the hospital?
I think that the period that I would like to put on this is 2 days.
A time when Woodward was not always on duty
Or in the house?
So any time within 2 days. Now that could have been on the day of admission, it could have been the day before admission, but there's nothing that tells me exactly which day it was.
So when the prosecutors say that Matthew's fatal attack had to come within just a few hours of the baby's hospitalization, a time when only Louise Woodward was with the baby, the prosecutors were simply wrong.
In my judgment, they were.
You saying it's a 48-hour strangulation, that's like saying Nicole Simpson died of a heart attack.
It may indeed sound implausible, but in this medical study on strangulation published 12 years ago, Dr. Gillis was a co-author, a baby about the same age as Matthew Eapen was strangled, but the telltale signs of brain swelling did not become apparent until 48 hours after the assault. An adult later confessed to strangling the child.
If what Dr. Gillis says is true, then you conceivably cannot say for sure that Louise Woodward killed Matthew Eapen.
If you put the question that way, then, you know, you framed it, but you're asking the wrong question, I believe. That the point is that I believe that there is no credible evidence to show that it was a strangulation.
She says that Matthew Eapen's internal neck hemorrhages may have been caused by attempts to insert a breathing tube down the baby's throat. But a paramedic and an emergency room doctor say their efforts could not have produced those internal neck injuries. And one of D.A. Coakley's own medical witnesses, Dr. Eli Newberger, who oversees child abuse cases at Boston Children's Hospital, found the neck hemorrhages troubling.
Did it not occur to you that the death might have been caused by strangulation?
When I looked at these results, and I testified to this effect at the grand jury, I was also concerned about the possibility that the child may have been grabbed by the neck or possibly even shaken or slammed as it was held by the neck.
Neuberger still believes Matthew Eapen died from an episode of violent shaking and slamming, though he did not dismiss outright Dr. Gillis's conclusions.
Now, you've talked to him about this whole business.
Yes, I have. I called him a few days ago.
And was he forthcoming with you?
Yes.
What do you think of his findings?
My sense is that the findings are speculative, but potentially valid.
I think that there's a lot of information that didn't come out at the trial that really needs to be brought out.
Dr. Marvin Nelson is a colleague of Dr. Gillis. He is chief of radiology at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. Before the trial, Louise Woodward's lawyers had contacted Dr. Nelson, but he never reviewed the full record and he never testified at trial.
What have we got here, Dr. Nelson?
We have the CT scans that were taken on Matthew.
At our request, Dr. Nelson spent months reviewing a more complete set of Matthew Eapen's medical records. And he concluded that the prosecution was wrong in saying Matthew had died from a blow to the head, which produced a 2.5-inch skull fracture and swelling of the brain.
Well, I see a large number of skull fractures that come through here on almost a daily basis, and the vast majority of them don't have swelling underneath. Fractures even more severe than the one that Matthew had.
So what did cause the fatal brain swelling?
I believe he was strangled.
Manually?
Yes.
In other words, you're saying that the truth has not so far, in your estimation, been brought out about the death of Matthew Eapen?
I believe so, yes.
But why did the jury never hear about the strangle theory?
Well, I don't know why the jury didn't hear. I am disturbed that the jury didn't hear all of the evidence in this case.
How could you conceivably have missed this at the time of the trial, Mr.
Well,
Scheck?
we had some of the very leading experts. These articles about strangulation are not generally known.
But, Scheck says,
it is consistent with our position that Louise Woodward not only shouldn't have been convicted, but shouldn't have been charged in the first place.
so what does Louise Woodward think about all this? When we come back, we'll tell you what she says, and our medical experts will raise other disturbing questions about the death of Matthew Eapen.